unmute my mic. JJ says my audio stinks. How do you feel about that, Steve?
You are quiet.
I am quiet. Okay. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10. Okay, I'm getting some yellow then. How's that?
You gotta have yellow.
That should be up by 25%. But doesn't seem, no, it clips if I get real hype, but I don't think real hype is going to happen today. Sorry to let everyone down. I'm going to go see if the streams are doing anything. Hey, there's a stream on YouTube and it's already live. Okay, we're learning this software as we go.
Yippee.
Let's see if LinkedIn is already live because that's where all my office friends can see me make a fool of myself. Hey, we are live there as well. Interesting. Cool.
Okay, so you left the Discord. Was that like intentional?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I just left it also.
Because I couldn't figure out how to fix the thing. But hopefully people will read the link in the chat and follow us over here for the
that'd be great to have Chair here.
For the live versions. For anyone just tuning in, we are testing out software that lets us omni stream to a bunch of different channels and is supposed to combine the chat back, but also lets us record it. So we are also, for maximum efficiency, combining 2 meetings, more or less. Usually we record the podcast and then we do office hours right after the podcast. The third host for office hours is gallivanting about in Portugal on vacation. So,
boo.
So we're getting weird with it.
Imagine taking days off.
I'm curious about this OmniChat thing because if that really works, that solves a problem as like a live stream producer I've had for a really long time.
Yeah.
Which is like you want maximum engagement from all the places you're streaming to, but it takes extra people to go monitor the chat. I've figured out really obnoxious and complicated ways to use OBS to like group things together to whatever, but like that's way more technical than it needs to be. That said, I got OBS up. Boom. Angle 2.
That's amazing.
And the green screen works, which is why you see half a green screen from the other angle. But this is a better angle for what we're doing here. Which on Riverside still is entirely green screen. Yeah, I had to set up a bunch of the old studio gear because I'm recording videos for a online course on generative AI that I'm doing for Virginia. So,
yeah, let me see if I can remember that correctly. I was at RibFest with my father, and we were in line, and it was like 1,000 degrees because we're in the mountains, so we're very close to the sun. And I was like dying, and he was dying, and the line was taking forever. So I was telling him about how you were working on this course stuff, and I was telling him about like the interesting copyright with regards to like education. Because typically, if a company hires you to create some intellectual property in a standard contract, that would then therefore and forevermore belong to that company. But if I remember correctly, it doesn't work that way with this school.
Cheers here. Do you actually want me to pick that up? I haven't even. This is another feature of the software that we don't. I've not yet tested.
Well, hello, Chair.
Hey, folks. How do I market more better?
How do you market more better? I forgot.
We had something for that today.
I forgot you had a whole setup. Proper podcaster hops in here.
I got the arm recently and it's changed now.
Nice. Good chance to try it out. Mac, you're gonna have to repeat your question, but also we have to solve the problem of how do we do the podcast intro. We could either switch to prefab intros we do after the fact, or just do it live for everybody.
Yeah, do it live for everybody because the song will do that. Hit the button.
Let's do it. We're already recording. So, hey everybody, this is the Marketing Machine Podcast. I'm Adam.
I'm Mackenzie.
Welcome back for another hang in the. What the hell do we hang out in? I don't remember.
It's the shop. This is the Marketing Machine Shop.
Welcome back for another hang in the machine shop.
Don't you see all these machines that we have around here in our workshop?
Thanks for joining us. Where today is, I'm gonna cut it together as a podcast, even though it's a hot mess. Yeah, as I described for the people on the live stream already, we're trying out essentially combining two meetings. Mac and I usually do record the podcast, and then we go do a live thing after that in office hours. But the third host for office hours is off on vacation, so we thought let's just mash it together and try out some new software. So we are live streaming to LinkedIn and YouTube right now, and if the software works as promised, Riverside, it's called. We are recording the podcast and simultaneous, and if you talk to us in the chat on LinkedIn or on YouTube, we should see it in our window, which I was just explaining to everybody before we started recording. It was a giant, it's a big deal for someone who has been trying to omni stream to places to engage my audience maximally for a long time. The interesting thing, I'll be interested to see if they solved it, is the lag. Like chat lag, people asking us questions via chat doesn't work great if there's too much lag. And so usually what I've ended up with is like if I'm streaming out of Discord, the Discord chat's right on. So the people on Discord you can actually talk to real time. But then the stuff that comes from the other platforms, it's like we've already moved on to another topic by the time I noticed that somebody on LinkedIn asked.
No, that is brutal. So yeah, +2 in the chat so we could time the delay.
Yeah, you know the tricks. I'm not good at live streaming things. But as soon as you said that, I recognized what you were doing. Oh, anyway. So we are back for podcast recording / office hours, which will make it interesting because the rule of office hours is that we come with some stuff to talk about. I am not going to follow a link to a video while
I'm doing it right now. T equals 8 and everything. I wonder what this could be.
T equals 8.
Bang. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
So the rule of office hours is we have some topics to talk about, but anything that comes in via the chat wins. So if you're here for the topics, we might seem distracted, but if you're here for the questions, you win. So, and our boy Chair immediately mashed the button to be a guest caller, which is also a feature that I didn't realize they had. But when the thing popped up, I said yes.
I saw a button, I clicked it. All of a sudden, I'm on stage live on a podcast. That's how things
go. Seeing a button and clicking it is a really important skill if you want to learn how to use new software. I mean, to be completely honest, like people ask me occasionally how I know about this, like software type things I talk about. And the real answer is I mash a lot of buttons.
You kind of just got to jump in. I'm thrilled that it worked out this way as I have 0 meetings scheduled today. I think it's the first time in a very, very long time. And so I have time to learn and grow and expand.
Yeah, do you need any marketing advice? That's what we're here for. Okay, you are on the broadcast. Cool. I just checked. I wasn't sure if you'd end up on the broadcast or like voice only.
I do need marketing advice, and I didn't bring specific questions. I wasn't planning on being in here, so I need a broad range of stuff. So probably topics is that sounds good to me, and I'll jump in with questions as they come.
Word.
We had a topic plan for today. I have a topic plan. I have an agenda.
Yeah,
I have a topic plan.
Something, so
I want to talk about is it time? Can we dive in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
We could do intros, but I don't. We're such a mess at this point. I said I'm Kerp. You're Mac.
I am Mac.
If you're watching on LinkedIn, look us up from the thing.
Yeah,
I am Chair.
So the thing that I wanted to talk about, the first discussion point is outrage media. And so generally this is a conversation about the intersection between what is media, what is an ad, what is entertainment, what do people like to see? Because kind of the holy grail of advertising is it's not an ad. It's just a fact that people talk about. It doesn't read like an ad. So for that, you have to get into what do people like looking at? How do we tell the algorithm that a piece of content is engaging and so should be shared to other people, which gives you free placements, as it were, right? You don't have to pay for the reach. You just get it because the content is quote unquote good. It does not have to be morally good to be engaging. So that's where this outrage media thing comes in. So I'm Canadian. Hi, by the way. So when stuff happens in America, I see it and get scared. And then I watch it, and then the algorithm's like, hey, this guy is really interested in American politics. That's not necessarily the case. You just have the biggest military in the world, so I need to like worry about it. And that's how outrage media kind of works. So like short circuits. So again, like defining outrage media, this is stuff like Adam Conover's show. Do we all know Adam Conover?
Yeah, of Adam Ruins Everything.
Adam Ruins Everything. Yes.
Yes.
So I was watching one of his bits on like a Supreme Court decision, and he literally like said the quiet part out loud, and that's what I wanted to like talk about this today, because it, like a lot of things clicked into place just recently. He was like, if you're not worried about this, you should be, and here's why. And then he continued the show, and I was like, oh, thank you for spelling it out. You know what I mean? He's intentionally like pushing buttons to induce anxiety in order to like keep engagement on the show, so that he can maintain attention. I think is the simplest way to put it. It's not necessarily about like selling the advertising, but when he maintains attention, then the platform that he's distributing the content on gets to sell advertising against it. Point one.
Yes.
Point one. Right? So content doesn't have to be like morally good. It doesn't have to feel good to watch. All it has to do is like be engaging in order to be effective marketing. Point two is that I think like all communications are in some way, they have like a bias in them. Like all media has an inherent bias. So really engaging content becomes like propagandic. Whatever the bias is supported by that engaging content to kind of move forward and propagate.
I had never connected the Latin roots of propaganda and propagate in my brain before.
You're welcome for that.
Sorry, say that second point again.
Because there's bias in all media, when you produce a highly engaging piece of media, whatever biases are inherent to that piece get propagandized as the engaging piece propagates through the algorithm and people talk about it. Right? Like advertising and marketing isn't just about, hey, buy my shit. It's not about like a conversion of like behavior, right? Like the kind of engineering way to consider a conversion is like a certain sequence of events is happening in order that results in me getting money. Right. But there's the other sense of conversion where you convert somebody from one way of thinking to another.
Yes. So
you can produce ads that are outrageous, that don't feel like ads, but are. And so an example of this, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was a fella who was suffering from a lawsuit for publishing home inspection videos on new builds. And the lawsuit said that the home inspector was bullying the new home builder by pointing out issues in the construction. Right? It was like libelous behavior. But he was doing all this stuff. He'd go and like do the home inspection, film an outrageous thing that he discovered, like, oh, this the gas meter isn't enclosed. What's the word for that? Hermetically sealed.
Right.
The gas meter is not hermetically sealed. This is outrageous. And then TikTok is like, I agree. This can't stand. And so they like share and watch and like, and all of a sudden his home inspection business has like 1.6 million followers and the phone's ringing off the hook.
So do you want to chase this? Okay. So then here's my question, because I have two angles, I think, in terms of how to chase this. And like, look, all of it's relevant to marketing. So maybe we're way in the weeds of media theory and things like that. But like, your point stands, which is this is a tactic inherent to media that you can use either subtly or overtly, right? Like starting off a burger ad with a burger getting smashed will cause a person to be like, excuse me, what? And then they stick around for the next 30 seconds of video. And I've just described to you like effective commercial editing, right? It doesn't have to be so outrageous as like the political stuff you're talking about for this to be a thing that's in play and for sure applies to marketing. So there's a media theory angle, which is to start from like the medium is the message kind of thing, I think. And then the other one is the psychology angle. I think they meet in the middle. what you're talking about that I think is interesting, and I guess my inclination is to start from the media theory side, because like that's my super fascination is things like, okay, how is Adam Ruins Everything different from how he's doing a show now that he's primarily focused on YouTube, and now that like the TikTok algorithm exists as a place where you have to go. Like I've been like, one of my fascinations with watching TikTok that pulls me back in even when I'm like, this place does not make me happy and I need to quit, is like you notice new editing schemes and then you see that practice like in real time diffuse across the entire population of people that just realize they should actually put their last edit first because it cleans up the loop, but also it makes you go, excuse me, what? And then you watch the rest of the video because you just saw the resolution of a thing and you don't know what the thing was and you can't help it. Like,
Yeah,
that only works because TikTok is based on this flip to the next thing, short form. Like, anyway.
No, we consulted people to do that for YouTube. The theory is results in advance.
Yeah. So it is. So it isn't even. So it's. But
it's not
okay.
TikTok
So
thing.
yeah. Well, so not necessarily TikTok. I'm saying the discovery. This discovery mechanism lends itself to meh and move on if you don't like the thing that's there because you're standing in front of an infinite pool of whatever, right? It's not a beer commercial during the Super Bowl trying to not get TiVo'd past, or like I'm dating myself by even saying TiVo'd past. But you know what I mean? Muted if it were pre DVR. So some of that comes down to people reacting to the medium, which gets you, Conover, not taking a minute to explain why you should care about this. At which point, eventually, you kind of have to come off the way he comes off if you're going to fit it in such a compressed space. If you don't care about this, you should. That said, he's talking about a topic that if you don't care about, you should. It's a sincere problem right now. But
this goes back in history, like a very long time, right? Like the idea of results in advance. Another important marketing precept is that word of mouth is the very best, right? So ads that don't look like ads, and then channels that don't look like channels. People telling other people about your thing is the bomb. That's like the goal. So I'm thinking about like how somebody would gear themselves up to go see a Shakespeare play while he was alive. I wouldn't just be like, oh, Shakespeare, cool, sign me up. Somebody would have to tell me like, oh, it's funny, it's so funny, like this happens, they make like so many dick jokes, you gotta come. And I'm like, okay, dick jokes, I'm in. And then like I start watching Shakespeare, and Shakespeare, like at the start, it's always like quite serious. The fun parts come like in the second and third act and stuff like that, and the wordplay comes around there, not like bang out of the gate. So if I was seeing Shakespeare, if I was walking by and there was Shakespeare, I'd be like, Audi 5000. But if somebody told me that there was a payoff coming, I'd stick around. And I think that like literature works the same way. This book is about this drama, and you wouldn't know that from the first page or the back cover. So results in advance almost like models word of mouth.
Interesting. It's the place my head goes the quickest, although I don't know if it's relevant. It's just like learning how to make films of target is like an hour and a half to 2 hours, writing a script, blah, blah, blah. I grew up with and was always drawn to the era of like Tarantino, non-sequential, Pulp Fiction, like stuff like that juggled it up. And part of what you're talking about is that kind of, you do see movies do that, but you go to script writing class and they don't talk about this aspect of it. They just say, here's the hero's journey in 3 acts and set it up, whatever and whatever. And I get that idea if you have a captive audience for 2 hours and it's like, okay, I need to go on a journey. Yeah, Chair, you want to elaborate on that?
That's just something that pops into my head is that for the same reason that cooking content is always engaging across a wide swath is that everyone wants to see the end result, want to see the resolution. If you see things being chopped and flambéed, you want to see what the end result is. And it feels related in that if you see a resolution out of context, it implies there was conflict. And as you get into the conflict, now people are engaged to connect the two pieces. Now they have both pieces and they want to see the connection. It feels related. It's a different. Feels related.
I don't remember who said this, but some like comedy theorist. I'm so bad with like attributing my quotes. I'm so sorry. But basically the idea is that humor is the sensation of something being humorous. Oh, that was funny. Is the feeling of like perceiving danger, but then realizing that it didn't exist. Right? Like being informed, hey, this is not a dangerous situation, is what is funny. And so in the context of like entertainment, I think there's a little bit of that too. Like you feeling that feeling of confusion, like demented, right? Like my brain isn't working correctly. This is not the order things are supposed to be happening in. I have to resolve this. And then, so you stare at the video and then it continues. And then all of the confusion like melts. Like you're like, okay, there's nothing, I'm not having a stroke. I'm not like temporally dislocated, right? Things are happening in order. And so that relief, I think, is like one of the dopamine rushes because it's similar to the structure of jokes. And so it's all just like entertainment at the end of the day. Like, so there's a question here of like, what is entertaining, right? Is like just stressing people out what entertainment actually is. And so does that make outrage media the better media than humor or documentaries or music, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. The tension that's present. Like if you're aware that someone is trying to be funny, there is a tension that exists as they attempt, and you decide whether it is actually funny or not. And creating that, and it's similar. Like I get like the theme park theory. Like some people go to be super stressed out at the top of the roller coaster, and then the relief when you get off and you didn't die.
You didn't die.
Or at least that's how I experience theme park roller coaster.
Well, so yeah, there's an interesting sort of there's the not moral but value judgment inherent in what you're chasing there, Mac, which is if the thing that is the most irresistibly captivating is the better media, then, and like this is the thing. If you want to chase it through economic terms and say that has the most value that we can apply dollars to, it sure seems like that's the better form. Outrageous content hijacks the brain, makes you pay attention. Now I can sell ads against it, right? But like what I think all the platforms that are emerging now are forcing us to sort of reckon with is like the moral side, right? And you see that to some degree, right? An ad that is too outrageous gets juice for being outrageous. And it's okay if you want your ad to be associated, like if it's okay if you don't mind your ad being associated with that. But if you do, then that's not necessarily good. You know, well, maybe it lives at the differentiation between brand and like pure marketing, because from a marketing standpoint, there's no such thing as bad publicity. You're getting action, right?
Impressions are key. You need to have a high frequency with your target audience.
Right. But if they're there because they think that, because if they're there purely because of outrage, they're probably not going to buy your product. Right. Which is why, like for all the shouting about censorship, the reason that the ad dollars on Twitter have fallen off is because they don't want to be next to content that doesn't fit the brand, association. But so that's like, it gets to an interesting place with a lot of the things that you care about, Mac, which is why you're here, which is like, okay, so as marketers, there's the question of how we use the thing that you're talking about. As people trying to not have our social order fall apart, there's the question of, is this stuff so irresistible that algorithmic recommendation algorithms should be regulated like cigarettes or something like that, right? Um uh
Yeah, the internet should just be like turned off, quite frankly.
but like to not go down one of those things that gets too pejorative, I think that maybe the angle is like, okay, but how does someone live in a world where this is happening? Because it seems like the best resistance to that on some level is just familiarity with the aspect of like, if everyone can understand what that is, then maybe after a couple generations, the same misinformation won't work as well or whatever. Cause we'll be like, oh yeah, that's the outrage trigger. Like, I don't, it's a tough one, right? Because you go to your media field to like learn about the world. You go to your media stream because we're predisposed to want to go find out what's going in the world for our own safety or what's going on socially. So we're not ostracized from the, the tribal unit or whatever.
I think there's a bit of like Overton window here too.
And then we
Like,
immediately get hijacked by,
we don't think that Shakespeare is funny today. We treat it like it's quite
Right.
serious, right?
Right.
It's quite an artistic and refined art medium. But at the time, like the people that they were selling tickets to were like medieval peasants that couldn't read and were basically only interested in jokes about genitals. And so like Shakespeare, yeah, it is that, but nobody's looking at it and feeling like, oh yeah, this is exactly like watching a comedy stand-up special. Like the thing that was outrageous to people then, like outrageous and engaging, and they couldn't look away, and it was like this famous thing that's so famous all these hundreds of years later, now is quite tame and boring. And so there might be something like that too, right? Like things that outrage us today we might just not care about in a couple generations.
Yeah, my favorite, and this is just money for the fact that we're streaming on LinkedIn, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Yeah, my favorite thing is always like, I can't wait until we're watching some future version of whatever a talk show looks like, and somebody tries to corner a politician about their dick pics. And the answer is just like, what were you doing as an adolescent with a smartphone that you didn't end up with some dumb shit on your phone that you sure wish, now wasn't there? But like, it's ridiculous. Like that we care about that. It's fair for it to be a social norm. But the idea of some of these things coming back to, I mean, the Anthony Weiner situation, slightly different, right? But if somebody wanted to throw back in my face pictures that exist in somewhere in my media history, if it truly is forever, then like I've been in a couple of long distance relationships. If that comes up on a talk show, what can I do but own it? Kind of like I just did. And that's an example of a shift that I think, to people that didn't have access to that technology at the age where they were doing stupid things or in an age of trying to have a romantic relationship with someone 3,000 miles away, then like, yeah, you might look at that and go, well, that's an inappropriate thing to have taken a picture of. That said, there's probably all kinds of like, nitrate on glass pictures of, junk that are just lost to the dust because that's how history works instead of what we have now, which is the forever digital record of whatever. But yeah, so you're right. I mean, on some time scale, it kind of all doesn't matter because outrage is what it is, right? But the problem we have right now is like the propagation of, like you said, like I'm less worried about brands using it in the sense that you're talking about than the more like purely truly fake news side. And I don't mean to, like, I hate to use a co-opted term, but I just mean like there becomes a problem of how can you know what's true if the feed is full of junk that looks like stuff that should be true and is deploying this outrage mechanism, right? Like, and what I mean is you see a thing come across your feed that appears to come from a reputable blog that has all the followers that whatever, and appears to be from your town, and it mentions a shooting at the mall where you frequently go. Like that is going down the same avenue of just like, oh no, I need to see what this is about. And you click on it and they get a bunch of ad impressions. It turns out to be fake, but even worse, maybe word spreads. And then you have a like, so like, I don't know, how do we fix this side of it that is okay, we could wait for the morals to expire and change around outrageous things. But like at the same time, it sure seems to be one of the features of, I'm not even gonna say the internet, right? It just happens at scale and quickly on the internet. But the feature of any publication medium is snake oil. And it's like easier to fix when it's just magazines and it's harder to get publication out there, but it becomes a real problem at scale once you're expecting, Facebook to be the place you get your news, which for me it was for a long time until that feed turned into crap because people were sharing things that weren't true based on panic, which is the sort of, the top level problem maybe with what you're talking about.
Well, the really good news is that the FCC isn't in charge anymore. We have all collectively lost our publishing privileges, more or less, I think. So if we can't have nice things, right? As a civilization, like in order to have nice things, there has to be sacrifices. And some sacrifices are harder than others. Sometimes it's just tax. If I pay tax, I get to have bushes on my street because I pay somebody to go and water them. Or sometimes it's like, hey, we can't have first party do-it-yourself advertising anymore. You have to go through an agency that's legalized by the FCC to kind of maintain the what's going on with advertising. That is a future that might come up soon, right? It could be censored, it could be regulated. It could not have until earlier this week, but now it can.
Well, to be clear on that, that's it could have through the FCC. And to be fair to the idea of that Chevron ruling, to which I believe you're referencing, the idea that those decisions should be made by the people through their representatives via law is nice. It just doesn't work because you need experts to execute that stuff. And then it becomes problematic. And so the giant problem with Chevron is now judges are going to decide everything. Now, some panel of
that's much better because you can just bribe them.
That think the internet is just a series of tubes are going to make all the decisions about how the internet works.
That's amazing.
That's not a better solution. I'm sorry.
No, it's much better.
So anyway,
I'm so thankful for the Supreme Court for doing this.
But either way, though, you bring up a valid point, which is like I said, regulation becomes an answer, and it was one of the answers, with the airwaves and broadcast radio and broadcast television. It's a finite resource. So the reason that the FCC and all those things came to exist in the way that they did had a lot to do with the notion that we all got together and we said there is limited broadcast spectrum in the radio frequency that we can use for these things. So we need to treat it as a public resource and allocate it that way. So what you're talking about is not completely unheard of, right? You need a broadcast license to have a major radio station in a metropolitan area. And that's issued by the FCC, and you have to go through hoops. And if they get pissed off at you, they pull your license. And so, social media has created this sort of stupid fight now on some level, stupid, right? Stupid through the lens of same as it ever was, which is because of Section 230, our new media feeds through all the social media channels are not regulated like broadcasters or like publications. And so everyone now has this idea around free speech where it's like, hey, if you take down my tweets, that's censorship. Okay, but is it censorship to have a broadcast license that keeps Howard Stern from being, too outrageous on broadcast radio? It's a when you look at it through that lens, it's an interesting thing, because is it censorship for the FCC to have licenses? It sure seems necessary because of the limited spectrum. But I think one of my theories, maybe this is the way that sort of ties it up, I don't know, not that we need to, we got 20 minutes, the way to look at it is attention. Attention is the finite resource. And you only have so much for yourself, but much like we regulate other vices, like the idea that we need to regulate tobacco because nicotine is an irresistible,
So amazingly awesome.
Yes, but it's also like to your brain an irresistible problem once it plugs into a certain set of receptors, right? Like, and we looked at that and we went, oh, that's too powerful. We need some rules about that. Like, is it reasonable to look at these media feeds or just to look at attention as the finite resource that we know now, because you can run these social science studies, like is hijackable by things. The problem though is speech in a legal sense, right? The idea of free speech is the main thing we use to hijack attention. And so then it runs into that problem of like endlessly fighting about, is this free speech or not?
Yeah.
Although censorship is also free speech, which is the thing about those feeds.
If I were to fix it, I would do it like at the platform level. I would make like a follow meaningful, because they're not anywhere, right? It's all just like algorithm. There's no like show me everything from my followers on any of these short form video content platforms.
Yeah, there's a distinction in there. I can't remember what it is. I heard somebody talking about it. It's when I got it. What you just described is the shift that if this is, Mark's going to be mad he missed this one. He and I very much lived through, like, when he talks about Twitter, he speaks fondly of the early years and where everybody was kind of connecting with like minds and whatever, which I believe at this point, academics who draw the distinction call the social networking phase. So the early promise of all of this stuff was we were using Facebook to network among people, and it was all based on follows because we hadn't come up with algorithmic feeds yet. And so it was literally just, I follow these people, so I see their stuff. And that was super powerful because it pulled together communities of people that are like still the stories that the companies are drafting behind as they tell you, here's the reason you can't make laws. Because, well, how else would I have found the Reddit community for, LGBTQ youth or whatever, right? But what you're talking about is that was driven by follows. That was driven by the social networking phase of the whole thing. And then we switched to social media, which is when they switched to, now this is a media stream that you watch and mostly passively engage with unless you decide to go after it. And like you said, that's when the algorithm starts to solve for outrage and all of these things that it really, it's like hijacking a part of your brain. I don't know the name of, because I don't know, I haven't looked it up.
The amygdala, Kurt. It's
there
a little
you go.
Almond in the center. It's a good song by oh shoot, what's their name? Those boys from Sweden. Shit, what the fuck is it called? Such a good song. So anyways, I think with like the last little bit here, like, okay, so like we've identified the problem, we've identified how people are using it, we've identified kind of the harms that it causes. I don't know if we hit that one, but cortisol obviously is deadly, makes you fat and ugly and stupid and underproductive.
Stress
and like
hormone,
oversleep.
cortisol.
Yeah. So having outrage content everywhere is like not good for society because it literally makes you sick, right? Getting stressed out all the time. Obviously it's lots of fun, but it makes you sick.
And it's also really not good for human coordination because there are important things for us to coordinate and exist effectively and peacefully as humans, like a source of truth and what's the word I'm looking for? Just grace to be able to exist with one another's differences without realizing they aren't while realizing those differences aren't a threat to us.
Yeah.
And a great way to be outrageous is to shout about how someone is a threat to you.
Yeah.
Right. So like,
okay, so that's what's bad with it. And then how we would fix it, which is legislating the feed providers and proposing, right, to remove discoverability. I think like the feature of discoverability in these algorithms is what the big issue is, because they're doing discoverability to like increase watch time, to maintain retention on the platform. And that solving doesn't work with humanity. The thing that people naturally solve for is outrage and is these high stress situations, because something outrageous and stressful is the best form of entertainment. That's the most entertaining thing to us, to be laying on our couch with like Dorito dust all over our shirts and just being like pissed off and stressed out. That's what humans like to do. So we can't, like, if we want to have society, we can't let people do that, right? It's like, I think that we've identified like an addiction in a new way. There's no drug associated with this addiction,
Right.
but it is certainly an addiction. And we can't allow people to peddle addictive goods. Okay, so that's how we fix it. Now, how do you make money?
Unregulated. Unregulated addictive goods.
Yeah. We can't let any like Yahoo with a $1,000 loan
Yeah,
for
I
a
think you're right.
smartphone do it.
I saw there was a Hank Green tweet at some point that has always stuck in my mind, which is, you know, one of his very much just shouting into the ether sorts of things, where he was just like, it said ban algorithmic trends, or ban algorithmic trending topics, I think is what he was on about at that point. But I think you're taking it maybe even a step further, which is like, I think that's what they talk about when they're talking about Section 230 reform, right? You got to knock that out, but you have to replace it with something else because it's there for a reason, which maybe is worth explaining quickly for anyone not caught up. Section 230 is a carve out in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, I think is what it is, which regulates a lot of the content on the internet currently. It's a U.S. law. I think that's the law it's in. Anyway, it's the carve out that says that they're not responsible for what other people post on their platform. And the early argument for that was, look, Facebook can't be Facebook if we are the ones that get sued if someone puts up an offensive thing and we are being sued because we're hosting it on our server. And the lawmakers agreed, and they put that thing in there. So we'd have to repeal that and replace it with something else. And
no, I think that they did repeal that. There's like there's things like, because I'm a web developer, Kurt.
Yeah,
there was something that came up where like I have to deal with that. I have to like have a monitoring feed on all my forums.
Interesting. Maybe that's just in Canada.
Yeah, maybe.
In the US, they haven't pulled the thing. But yeah, so one angle is treat them like publishers, which would subject them to a bunch of, you know, new scrutiny, right? So one of the arguments is not to ban the feed or to regulate it in the sense of saying, here's what's allowed to happen in a feed, but you could just say that to recommend something, even algorithmically, is editorializing, which then makes you a publisher and then makes you susceptible to the extent that, you know, if the New York Times went buck wild, I could sue them for defamation or whatever and win a bunch of money.
I agree. I concur.
So that's one way to do it.
That's the way I would do it.
The other way is to go after and try to outline how algorithmic feeds are allowed to function, I guess, which strikes me as trickier because, like, what you want with something like this is to put in the mechanism to let the problem get fixed on an increase. I'll say it this way. The argument for what we just talked about that you agreed with is if you apply it that way, while some of it creates a burden for the companies, you can get that part sorted, right? We figured it out with YouTube and copyright and content ID and actually all the stuff I think we talked about in the last podcast episode, which if you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you.
That should have been 20 minutes ago because you're having a really boring day at work.
But also I didn't, I haven't put it up yet. So
it
doesn't exist yet for anyone on the live stream.
Yeah. We talked about how they use like AI to
ID.
get around these systems and how these systems like rely on AI and how there's there's like literally like AIs fighting inside of the internet to prevent you from seeing stupid bullshit. And it doesn't work, which is so fun. The robots are losing against each other.
Yeah. Well, it works in some places. It's worked really well for YouTube, making sure that musicians get paid for like songs that are used in their whatever, which was an early problem that had to get fixed because 230 didn't cover it. And so we have a technical solution to, anyway, whole episode about that. But like, I think the argument for opening up the liability and then letting the system figure it out is that is sort of how you can adversarially find the niche, like the weird niche hacks, rather than the other side, which is trying to imagine all the bad things that will happen and writing a law that specifically calls it out. Like, that's considerably harder.
I just want to be done with discovery. I do not wish to know what a VTuber is. If YouTube had asked me, hey, are you interested in learning about VTubers? I would have said, no, thank you very much. But that is not what happened in my experience on YouTube. I could not have avoided it.
Well,
I'm good on recommendations. Don't tell me about a VTuber. Don't tell me about furry this. Don't tell me about like fucked up that. Leave me alone. Let me find what I'm interested in.
Yeah. So is it as simple as legally requiring like the option to opt out of algorithmic discovery mechanisms? So you literally, like, the law could just say you have to have a version of this software where someone can turn this thing off and only see updates from the people that they follow.
And also anyone under 25 can't turn it on because their brains are not ready.
Not developed. Yeah, that is an interesting. When I say it that way, it feels like my new favorite solution. Like, I don't even care about the Section 230 stuff. Here we are, coming out, endorsing, turning off. Man, it's gonna change marketing though. Not really. I'm just gonna have to roll back to like the first 5 years of digital media marketing.
So while it's active, while this is still happening, and it's not in your county hasn't outlawed this yet because of the recent Chevron overturn. So while this is possible, with the last little bit here, like, how do you use this, right? Because Chair came in and he was at the beginning of the show. He's like, I have to market something and I don't know what I need to know. So I was like, well, I've been wanting to talk about like this. There's a wonderful book, Chair. I don't know if you're a book person. There's a wonderful book called Hey Whipple, Squeeze This about advertising, which is about how the more annoying an ad is, the more effective it is. Especially advertising where they repeat the brand name over and over and over, or they have detestable. Okay, case in point, do you remember when Kylie Jenner solved racism in the Pepsi ad?
Not popular. I do remember it.
Of course you remember it. It was the worst ad ever, and we're still talking about it. Do you see what I'm saying, right?
Right.
So the thing that makes an ad good is how memorable it is. It doesn't have to be morally good. It doesn't have to be aesthetically good. You can just like make an ad where your brand name is like black and white and red, like switching really fast, like whatever, 6 frames a second. And you just say the brand name over and over and over. And that ad would like go crazy. While I was doing the show, I got an ad from Pit Viper. It was an SMS ad. And Pit Viper's SMS campaign strategy is to text like a really needy ex-girlfriend. And it said, hey, I know I'm not supposed to be talking to you right now, but I just had 3 Red Bulls and a bunch of Ritalin, and I just need to tell you about this sale that's happening at Pit Viper. And I was like, dude, come on.
I have not yet gotten to work for or with a brand that can that freely just go full send on like that version of, man, it'd be fun to work with Liquid Death or Pit Vipers or something for that, exactly that kind of thing. Yeah, the other thing I've seen that aligns with this outrage stuff, again, it's not outrage, but like I've noticed the trend in TikTok ads that are generally by like the micro influencer types, right? Somebody where I'm like, I sort of recognize you, but maybe not. I don't know. And it starts with them going, I am pissed off that I bought this water bottle. And then they talk about how they're pissed off because it's made them hate every other water bottle in their house. And incidentally, you can buy this water bottle in their TikTok shop, right? Like
yeah, danger. There's a horrible product here. Learn about this horrible product that sucks so bad.
Right.
But not really.
And I just watched that ad. I'm like, and I don't necessarily click on it, right? But like, and so I don't know. This is where then my data brain wants to run tests, right? I'm like, okay, does that move an appreciable amount of traffic? And I guess the thing is, you figure out that the ones that work become the norms for the TikTok. It comes
Yeah,
back to what
TikTok
I was talking
affiliate
about,
ads
right?
would be
Hanging out on TikTok as a media nerd, watching these things propagate through a community of people working this algorithm to get traffic for money.
They're in the trenches. Like if they're doing it, they're doing it because either it's an experiment or it works. And both things should get you excited.
And you figure that out really quickly. But so yeah, to how to be a better marketer. Think about starting weird ads with
No, piss people off.
piss people off. There you go.
This is not
Cool.
how to be a good person, by the way.
Right. Awesome. Well, yeah, let's wrap this up. For anybody that joined us for the live stream, thanks for hanging out. Chair, thanks for hanging out the whole time and looking interested enough on camera that I didn't kick you out so that you weren't there looking bored.
Oh, this is great. I'm actively taking notes.
And
So good.
thanks to all of the podcast listeners.
What did you get for
on
notes?
that end? Yeah,
You
we
want a
can do
quick
wrap-up.
rundown?
I'm so curious.
Outrage media doesn't have to feel good to be engaging. Engaging doesn't equal positivity. Inherent bias present in a piece of media becomes propagandized outrageous ads that don't feel like ads but are effective. TikTok schemes. I'm pretty good at taking a lot of notes.
Well, and you got stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, I did not get a chance to address that. Like we didn't talk about the bias and propaganda piece. Well, that's why you should like and subscribe wherever you are. Because maybe we'll talk about that next week or whenever we're back doing this. In the meantime, thanks for checking out the Marketing Machine podcast and or hanging out in office hours. I have been Adam.
I've been Mackenzie. Thank you.
Take it easy, everybody.